If we could record this, that would be awesome. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Doherty. So, John, you've got the floor.
Thanks, Anton. And for those of you who don't know me, John Doherty. I think most of the faces on here, though, I've met and talked to at different conferences and everything else. So I work as the special assistant to the general president. Right now, I'm tasked with figuring out where we stand in terms of government spending right now, what grants are out there, what possible industry sectors are going to be boosted, and looking at, what the forecast might be for us meeting workforce demand across those different sectors that'll be funded. A lot of things we've identified that exist in all different departments. So we've put together a government spending working group that consists of all department heads, plus a couple other staff members that are on to help figure out, just where we are at already in our organization, how ready we are for this workload that's coming up. And I'm trying to identify, where the pockets are that we can assist and be helpful to your district councils in helping in each one of those roles. I put together a presentation on it that does go through a lot of the other departments along with training to kind of give some clarity around how we're trying to align the different departments around this, because it's definitely going to be an all hands on type move, which making sure our, ramping up and scaling our apprenticeship programs, our footprint in pre-apprenticeship across the country. Also, how we are messaging this to contractors and developers that we have these programs that can assist them. A lot of these grants are competitive, so states will be competing against each other for the money. Those that comply to different labor standards and have that in there, that criteria is weighted in a way that it's prioritized. So in states where they are utilizing our programs, where they are working with us, where they're encouraging project labor agreements, that's where they're going to have the better application, receive the most money, which translates into more projects that they can get done that are in their backlog. So with that, give me 1 second. I will load it up and we can get going. There we go. Can everybody see that? All right, just the slide. Right. So basically, the building trades has been fighting for infrastructure for the past, I don't know how long it's been Infrastructure Week. We just recently had our legislative conference where Biden laid it out as, this is actually going to be the infrastructure decade. The money that they've put forth in the bipartisan infrastructure bill is historic. It's more money than we've seen. It's above baseline spending in grants that are being reauthorized. So it's going to provide to get these jobs done. But they've also inserted a lot of different language to make sure that there was worker empowerment in organizing opportunities as well. With that, they've also added in training funding opportunities that we can take advantage of to apply for grants and expand our apprenticeships to meet the demand that's going to be created by that. With a friendly administration right now, I can't say enough how much the doors have been open. Anton and I have been in a lot of conversations with these federal agencies who have really just dug in to figure out, what ideas that they can put on the table, what language they can put in these grants, and how they can best affect the implementation with the expansion of union density across the country. So it really has been, a joint effort between us and a lot of the federal agencies to see this through. One thing I'll add, though, is that, with this huge ask, with this huge investment, with everything that we've tried to get in on labor standards, that if we are not effective, if we're not meeting that workforce demand that's created, if we're not meeting the goals in diversity, equity, inclusion, it goes to a point where, they lose politically on that, and they say, we worked with you, we tried, you weren't able to deliver. So, it's really hard to get them back to that bite at the apple to work with us if we can't. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure that everybody's educated on every level and every department on what's out there, what's available. And we want to make sure that we're getting that to you so that you can also work with other stakeholders in your communities to apply for that money. So what does that look like? Historic funding over 5+ years. Right now, they're pushing through a rule on Davis-Bacon coverage to expand Davis-Bacon, and what that looks like. That's a whole separate presentation and educational. Right now, there are 6 programs out from Department of Transportation that include things like what is your diversity work plan? What is your, workforce diversity plan? Whether or not you're encouraging project labor agreements, whether or not you're utilizing apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships, and pre-apprenticeships. Those things are built in now to the selection criteria of those grants. So if applicants like the DOT, municipal planning organizations in your area are applying for those funds, if they have those things built in, if they've talked to us and they incorporate our programs into their plan, they score higher, they receive more money and can do more projects. Most politicians are looking to do more projects because it's really all they have to stand on is what economic impact they've created for their constituents. So the more that they can work with us to get that, they're in a race to do that, whether Democrat or Republican. Some federal projects are covered by the new Biden PLA executive order. So that covers only direct federal spending of projects over $35 million. We're looking at different ways where we can move around some of these projects through, for example, moving from DOT over to US Army Corps of Engineers, some of the projects, some of the bridge projects that are out there that they would then be covered because it's direct federal spending. So there's a lot of work in federal advocacy and working with the agencies on this stuff. We hope that we can, really drill down and move a lot of this stuff in our direction. A lot of it's already in our direction. Really, we just have to pick up the ball and run with it. So like I just mentioned, of the 1.2 trillion, there is 550 billion new dollars being spent in those programs. The biggest buckets are in transportation and water, the water infrastructure. So that's going to be a huge build out to our industrial coatings programs. There's going to be a huge demand that we're going to have to meet. So that's where we're focusing a lot of our efforts in getting into those 2 agencies, DOT and the EPA. There's other agencies, of course, that goes into. Department of Energy, we're working with them around new offshore wind farms. That strategy is more to get the relationship with those utility service companies that also control the onshore wind farms, for which there's 70,000 wind turbines already set up around the country that need maintenance. Also in government buildings, we're working with the GSA right now and the DOE to figure out building performance standards codes, where those can be changed and where they can utilize our programs, especially the certifications with AGMT, to ensure that the solutions that they're doing in energy retrofit include glass glazing, building envelope, weatherization, those other things. So every agency we're getting into, we're looking to see where we can develop work opportunities that are already funded by the infrastructure package. Just to give you a visual on the size of those programs, in roads and bridges, that's going to be where the most money has already been sent over to FWHA, the Federal Highway Administration, along with other programs under DOT. In transportation, There's 163 billion spent there. Roads and bridges will be 121 billion. Of those, we already have what's being allocated in terms of the bridge investment program. So those that are coming out in formula funds that aren't competitive grants, we have a list of, how much each state is going to get. So we'll get that information to you. Your political directors already have that information, along with some of your service directors. We've already done the presentation to the central region and the western region, so they have that information as well. So if you're talking, make sure you're talking in water and wastewater, there's $63 billion. We obviously have a lot of programs going on, industrial coatings on water infrastructure, wastewater treatment facilities, drinking water, and water storage. So there's going to be a huge spend there. It's an opportunity to make sure that we get people out to do those industrial coatings. Also, again, back to certifications, making sure that everybody in your council that's an industrial painter has that CAS certification. We're going to be pushing proof of concept on utilizing those certifications in this area. The EPA is having great conversations with us in pushing that through. So please ramp up those programs if you haven't already. I'm sure that's a conversation that you'll be having with Anton. So other areas that we're looking at in that is remediation and resilience. There's also a lot of money being pushed forward for lead abatement. The president put out an executive action on lead pipe replacement, which is not us, but also with lead paint and the lead paint action plan. They're looking to remove lead paint from as many schools and as many housing authorities as possible. There'll be a huge spend there. So that's another place that we're looking to ramp up in terms of training. To give you an idea of baseline spending in rail, transit, and highway, there's 81% in rail, 40% in transit, 46% in transit. This is money over baseline spending that's already been allocated. So anything that we've been doing for work in these areas previously, our contractors picking up jobs based on the allocations that are out, that's going to increase that much more because of this infrastructure package. So the more contractors that we can get certified in NACE, the more, well, whatever that certification is now, Anton, again, going back to you to defer on what the names are, and other, not just contractors, members in those areas working together to get that done. So what does that look like? What they're projecting out right now from this bill in terms of construction and extraction jobs is 5.1 million more jobs created through this bill. Those with certifications and licenses, 1 million. That doesn't include our own certifications. So that to keep in mind as we're working towards these programs and making sure we're getting more people certified. They're actually keeping track of that and looking at how they can reform their specs, their spec books, and add more certifications, how they can look at their building performance standard codes and make sure that some of those have our certifications in there as well when it comes to energy retrofit in glass and glazing. So how the money flows, only 6% of this money is going to be direct federal construction. That's what's going to be covered by PLA. So while we would want more than that, states do have a lot of discretion over the money that's going to be coming out in here. There's also earmarks that are going out that are being pulled out that are just being added again into this current bill. But that gives us an opportunity to engage on the local level. Areas where we need to build up our infrastructure around what relationships we have in the workforce development community, what relationships we have in the developer and the contractor community, and also what relationships and how we're pushing more on, building out these CAS forums and these glazing forums to bring more of the politicians in to see that we're actually a solution to this labor demand that's coming up. So one thing to think about when you're strategizing back home with other departments. Indirect federal spending, you'll have military construction, the Bureau of Reclamation and Water. A lot of the brownfields and remediation work will fall under that. National Park Service, where that pertains in your area, if you have any contracts with the Park Service, and federal buildings. Federal buildings is going to be one of the big ones where they've committed to decarbonizing 4 million buildings, 4 million federal buildings across the United States. In there, we are pushing for glazing to be one of the top solutions to make sure that these cities and municipalities are going for deep energy retrofit. Also, there is a building performance standards coalition that they're standing up that 33 cities have already signed on to, which is really just a boost to their already 2040 and 2030 decarbonization goals. But again, how we can position the narrative around workforce development. So there's 3 different types of grant funding that's out there. You have formula grants, you have competitive grants, and you have loans and other grants. Within these grants, it's important to know that we're not the eligible applicant here. That's your state DOTs, that's your municipal planning organizations, and then a host of other eligible applicants. The key, though, is that we are an added value to each one of those applications. There's a focus within each one of these federal agencies right now on workforce development. Each one of the agencies has worked with the DOL under their Good Jobs Initiative to include a workforce development office in each one of those federal agencies. So they have a real stake in this right now, working with us. In fact, they've hired in a lot of those departments, people that we've been working with across our research and community partners across the spectrum. I don't know if anybody's familiar with NELP or EPI or Center for American Progress. Those different groups, they've pulled people from there that work on policy, that have worked with unions at the national level on policies to make sure that we're getting the correct language in there, that we're looking for opportunities within federal regulations to kind of turn the switch where we can do that. I know that we've been doing that across the board in our localities, trying to get CAS language in a lot of the specs and bond bills and things like that are going out there. We're doing that right now on the federal level with a lot of firepower. So it's a huge opportunity for us to engage. If we're talking to these state DOTs, municipal planning organizations, they're going to hear a lot of what we're saying from their federal agencies as well. So they're getting it top down as we're giving it bottom up. So that's a good organizing strategy, especially when everything is framed around workforce development. Formula grants are already dictated by law how that money is going to be spent. It's based on a formula that includes the census tract, how many people are in the area, how many deficient bridges or what the need is in those areas. That's how they dictate how that money is going to be spent, and they do that on a formula. The competitive grants is where there's really a sweet spot for us, because that's where we've been able to get selection criteria in that, including those things I mentioned before, that we can engage them and we can be part of that program. There's also loans and other, there's a lot of matching loans that go out to municipalities. I know that DC 30 and 14 and I believe 58 have a tri-council development fund where they have an innovative way of where they can loan money through their pension funds. But there's government loans out there too that can do the same thing, where we can match those loans and make sure that work gets done, especially in areas that traditionally are underserved and don't normally have the money or the budgets to get that work done. This is where we can actually increase union density in areas where there are none, because now there's federal dollars going in, and that being the goal of the federal government right now, to increase union density in those areas that aren't traditionally, amenable to PLAs and in other labor standards that we try to push through. So there's a lot of different areas that we're pushing through. So I encourage you definitely to work with your other departments in strategizing around how we attack these grants and make sure that it's all in the frame of workforce development. So formula funds in Bridge and Highway, that's the Bridge Investment Program. We have the numbers for the states right now. We'll get those out to you after this presentation. Also water infrastructure. That's the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. If you're involved with a local workforce development board and they're not already having these conversations about how to attack this, please be the driver. Please be aggressive in those conversations and make sure that we're driving the agenda, that we're the ones creating this workforce development agenda in the federal government and utilizing our programs to enhance what they have going out in those monies. Helps their cost benefit analysis. It helps the life cycle of asset. It helps all those things that we're pushing in our corrosion control campaign. It also encompasses what we're doing now in our energy efficiency campaigns. State revolving funds, for those who aren't familiar, they're basically low interest loan programs to municipalities and states to get money into their water infrastructure backlog to make sure that they're doing the work or creating work, building out facilities where needed in areas that have traditionally not had any. So those are going to be directed to be those are going to be directed to be spent not only in terms of workforce development, but also in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's an implementation guidance out right now from the EPA that does include those diversity goals, that does include the workforce development goals in partnership with labor unions. So that'll also be information that's sent out after this presentation. But these are all areas that we can really enhance the conversations that we're having and really be a driver. I can also say that most of the federal agencies that we've talked to, we haven't seen a lot of the other trades involved in these conversations. In terms of who's been talking, at least on this level, it's been us and the laborers kind of divide and conquer on getting the same labor standards that the DOL is promoting under MOU with each one of these federal agencies. So it's definitely we're ahead of the game here in terms of having those conversations. Where we need to get ahead of the game is where we're ramping up our programs, though, to meet that workforce development demand that's coming out. So competitive grants and MOUs, federal agencies set terms for applications. I have not updated this presentation yet. So those that say they're in forthcoming, those are actually already out as well. So right now there's the RAISE grant, the EV charging infrastructure grant, the port infrastructure development grant, the low emission vehicle program grant, which will put money out to bus facilities to build new bus facilities, doing so with our engagement with all the labor standards that we're pushing through, along with a mega grant from DOT, which builds out all those mega projects, those large scale airport infrastructure projects, infra projects, which combine a couple different modes of transportation. So bus facilities, trains facilities. For those from Boston, Eric Redden's on the phone, something like South Station. That's where that money's going to flow to. And then rural transport will go to federal highways in our rural areas and making sure that those smaller airports are being built and get that done. On every single one of these competitive grants, they have similar language to include your workplace diversity plan, to include PLAs, to include pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship utilization. So that's where we can engage the stakeholders and have that conversation around our programs and what we can do to add value to their application to get them more money. Moving on. So a new approach to labor. This administration has pulled out all the stops and opened all the doors and let us kind of burrow in and make sure that we're including all this language in there. Here's some sample language from the first RAISE grant that came out, that's out right now. Applicants should also describe whether and how project delivery and implementation create good paying jobs with the free and fair choice to join a union to the greatest extent possible, the use of demonstrated strong labor standards, use of project labor agreements, use of local hire provisions, and registered apprenticeships. That language exists in grant language right now. What's been relayed to us is where this is a generational investment, where these grants will be rolling out every year, they will be making that language stronger and stronger as we go to capture more and more of the work. Part of that process, though, is us actually capturing the work, building out the case studies, making sure that people are certified. So strengthening that language could be the inclusion of our certifications. So that'll come out every year. As we go through those cycles, we want to be, reporting back what we're able to capture, what we're able to put, our numbers, our work hours, including demographics of the workforce that we're putting on those jobs. They're going to be keeping track of this at the government level because they want to make the case that the union model is the model that works and leave nothing to question when Republicans come back into power. We're trying to institutionalize this as much as we can so that when that does happen, inevitably, it's not easily clawed back. So this stuff is in there right now. We have a window of opportunity. There'll be grants coming out every year. The more and more we build, the better we are positioned coming on the other side of this. So the competitive application as a model, just because those other grants and those loans don't have the language that the competitive grants doesn't mean we can't follow the same model around workplace diversity, around inclusion of project labor agreements and other labor standards. So I encourage anybody who's putting together a package for those stakeholders for competitive grants that's doing the same, following the same model for those formula grants and the loans. Make sure that all that stuff is always included. I imagine once the data collection process is complete and we have the package, it's just adding that into that. Again, we're trying to build a tool through training for organizers to get more community validators involved, to write us letters of support, also for the servicing directors to have the communication with the contractors on enforcing apprenticeship ratios, placing people from these programs that we're lifting up, and making sure that they understand that this is an added value, that this increases market share, membership, and impact in all those communities. Again, this will all be measured by the federal government and putting out as a case study, putting out as guidance and recommendations for agencies to follow as we're able to do it. So the public case for the private model, again, going back to the competitive grant on the formula grants, this also can be used as a model and should be used as a model for what's out there in private spending on private construction projects. As we're having these same conversations, they're the same stakeholders that exist everywhere. So if we're talking about the workforce development community, same people regardless of sector. If we're talking about the contractor developer community, they're doing public work, they're doing private work. If we're talking about general contractors, a lot of those may be different, but there's no reason why we're not using the same model in terms of how we build out this workforce development system, from education in schools to apprenticeship readiness to a registered apprenticeship program. That's how we meet labor demand. That's how we push back on the rhetoric around labor shortage and the fact that we're actually building, something that can meet these large demands. One thing I will say is at the same time that we're having this historic level of funding in public work, we also have $1.8 trillion in mega projects planned across the country over the next 5 years. So I know there's areas, I know that we've already had calls in about 700 drywall finishers for 3 different district councils to go in on some of these mega projects. We've just had to deal with the cracker plant in PA. We've just had to deal with Kings Bay down in Florida. It's been a scramble to get workers on these job sites. It's been a scramble to get glazers in a lot of areas for job sites. At the same time, at GPAC, we just, went through with all district councils and all your business managers that everybody's numbers are down. Everybody's membership is dropping still. So if we aren't creating a workforce development program that fixes that need, working together with dollars coming from the federal government, I don't know that we can make the case or the model. So just to keep in mind that there is a huge workforce demand coming. It's always been a struggle in organizing, in bringing new people in. And I know I've heard, the same struggle with training. How do we train more people? How do we organize more people without jobs to put them on? Right now, we have the jobs upcoming to put people on. Just 3 examples of those. In Tennessee, they're building out Blue Oval City, which is a $5.6 billion project, a huge city they're building to manufacture electric cars. In Charlotte, they have the Douglas International Airport, again, another $3.5 billion project that needs people from all trades. And in Boston, this is actually only one that I listed, but $8 billion in Suffolk Downs that's already under PLA that's going to be calling for a lot of people from all trades over the next 10 years. So with that being said, keep that in mind. That's a lot of information. It's a lot of numbers, but it really just comes down to how we're working together with our other departments to come up with a strategy that works. So labor demand and workforce development, just putting this out there because it needs to be said. According to the U.S. Department of Labor's Registered Apprenticeship Partners Information Database System, long acronym, DOL has a lot of long acronyms, found that in the construction industry, 43% of apprentices were people of color in union programs compared to 33% people of color in non-union programs. However, enrollment in these programs only shows that one small metric by which to judge these programs work to advance the careers of people of color. For true equity and justice to be sustained, officials must focus not solely on enrollment rates, but must carry the focus to retention and promotion within the workplace. That means in part working to ensure that apprentices have not only the technical skills, but also the professional tools they need to exceed. Apprenticeship readiness is a critical component to scaling the RA model. We have been working internally to identify where those pre-apprenticeship programs exist. We're looking for gold standards. We've already assembled a list of subject matter experts that we're talking to directly on a biweekly or monthly basis to figure out, what that gold standard looks like. Part of doing that is Anton's role in the ACA to deliver back, what could best work, not only what could best work, but actually how it could best be funded. So putting dollars into our training programs to make sure that we're reaching those goals. This administration is serious about those justice and equity goals, which is why they put out the J40 executive order that says that 40% of the funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law will go to underserved communities to benefit those communities, meaning workforce development, meaning that jobs are created in those areas that is bringing a sense of equity back into it. Please engage us on that. We have another program where we're developing out a leadership program for people of color to come in, not just to, rise in ranks in the union, but also to be able to have those conversations with their community partners, with legislators, and with people in the contractor and development community. So we're doing our part to try to figure that out and try to build that and ensure that we're meeting those goals. I encourage everybody here, please work with us in building that up. This is how we get ahead. This is how we knock out the non-union competition. Okay, a lot of information. So here's the real simple math. If anybody has seen The Hangover or is a fan of Zach Galifianakis, that comes from that. I thought it was hilarious. I don't see any smiles, so I'll move on. Roles in the district council. So this is also information we are pushing out to ensure that we have some clear first steps in doing this. The way we're looking at it in terms of how the money is rolling. So we have fiscal year 2022 with grants coming out. We're already a little behind the 8 ball with the first raise grant and engagement, but there's 5 other grants out right now with deadlines approaching. There's another dozen grants that are going to go out this year from DOT. All will have this language in it. All will help us build, the model of how we attack this work. Again, that's going to be all hands on deck. That's going to be all departments working together to kind of build a toolbox and a checklist on things that need to be in place to deliver to these eligible applicants to put us on the work. So one is to reach out to likely applicants. Projects gain priority for including labor in the planning. We give them a higher score because of our programs. Also, most of those planning agencies, most of the Department of Transportation already have projects in the books. They already have stuff that's gone through the planning and design process that's a backlog. They're just looking to get funding for them and get them out the door. They get the funding if they're including, what we're doing here. Encouraging all eligible applicants to include plans for registered apprenticeship programs, including partnerships with pre-apprenticeships or community organizations. If they are putting that in there based on what we have, based on the metrics that we've been able to collect, they're going to score higher. You'll get more projects to your state. We're working with them and the people evaluating these applications on the federal level. I mean, they're not just doing what we tell them to, but they're taking some guidance on, areas where we're trying to build. So anything that you have going on there, please let us know so that we can advocate for your state as well, and can let them know that, this group has really worked to put something together going forward. This is areas where we're still working to get there, so we can advocate. If you don't have everything in place as of yet, we can still do the advocacy for your district council, but we need to have them something to go on other than just they didn't show up in an application. Encourage applicants to adopt PLAs where appropriate and or targeted hire provisions to improve the project's chance of funding. So one thing that they've made really clear is that they've reversed their decision on the ban on local hire. That is actually the first touch point that we worked with DOT on to get that overturned. They're working with OMB right now to get that completely overturned across federal agencies so that local hire can apply to all of these projects. It's on us though to get in there and encourage them. They're doing the same on the federal level, but we need to get in there and define what that looks like for our areas in terms of local and targeted hire. They used to go on the metric of low responsible bidder. I'm sure everybody's used to that and working with these federal agencies. That is no longer the high factor in their cost benefit analysis. They've lowered that way down below these other priorities that they want to see get done. They really want to see union density be created here. So they are, putting things in a way where it helps us immensely. So how that looks in your departments. So again, going back to how we're building that toolbox for each department. It's kind of an escalation campaign where one department puts their stuff together. Everybody's putting their stuff together at the same time, but one benefits the next conversation. So in training, if we're gathering materials on recruitment strategies, demographics, geography served, what certifications we have, and materials on any articulated programs we may have out there with VOC-TEX or pre-apprenticeship programs. That can be something that's used in a conversation along with the application with our contractors and how we can benefit them and how we enforce them to how we force them to utilize our apprenticeship ratios, making sure that they're pushing people out. I know we were talking, Anton and I were talking yesterday on how contractors think journeymen just fall out of trees. So this is one area where we really need to have our service directors having those conversations and holding them to it. I come from the organizing department. I always get, crazy when I see us in the contractor's pocket. We have the opportunity right now to actually enforce some of this stuff if they want the work. Utilizing the program, sticking to the programs and holding them in compliance with the Department of Labor standards around these issues. Servicing should identify and perform outreach to contractors associations to determine whether we can meet the demand, get buy-in on placement and enforce apprenticeship ratios. So a lot of these numbers can do a lot of things. The high numbers could say, okay, we ride the wave, we get a lot more work to our contractors. If that's their plan, they're not looking to expand with this, which I've had conversations with contractors and a lot of them aren't. we need more contractors. So, after having that conversation, that's where we go to organizing, and we get a second bite of apple too. A lot of those contractors that are looking to do federal procurement that can with our programs in place. So the toolbox you're putting together on training is a useful tool to organizing to get more contractors into this contractor base that can do federal work. That being said, everybody has to be working in tandem. Without everybody's cooperation and participation, this program doesn't work. Political. So if everybody else is doing their thing, political, we have a lot of CAS forums out there. Bringing those elected officials that benefit from our PAC monies into our CAS forums, making sure that they see the workforce development programs that we have in place to meet the goals of the policies that they're writing. Not only gives them a better sense of who we are and what we do, but also gives them a platform for promoting more labor standards, more utilization of apprenticeship programs. Right now, we have a bill in Congress that we're pushing through that we're trying to get energy tax credits that include labor standards to develop out our energy infrastructure. That gives them, the talking points in the toolbox to get out there and say why they do it. It's not so esoteric. They actually see it in practice and can move it. They also provide, every single one of these levels provides letters of support to that applicant that's trying to fight for more money. So again, going back to Democrat or Republican, if their state is looking for money to do this, by following this process that we have, they can actually capture a lot more of this money. They can promote themselves and build their own platform around workforce development and level the playing field. So that is pretty much the roadmap. We do have a lot of information on this to dig in on. I'm going to get that over to Anton to get out to everyone on this call to make sure that you have it. Again, your political and service directors already have it. We're going through the same thing with organizing directors, but I'll also add that I'm also getting into district councils. I'm also, traveling out to different district councils to kind of walk through and identify, where some of this extra added support you can get in your district council to promote these things, how to tie it together between the different departments, and how to have a more successful application to get more federal grants. With that, I know that Anton has been working with a lot of the councils to encourage more funding to expand our apprenticeship programs. And have been working on getting what's out, the opportunity that's out there right now from DOL, the Apprenticeship Builds America grant, which is $113 million out there to expand registered apprenticeship programs with a $50 million set aside for pre-apprenticeship programs. I would encourage personally that if you're working with the pre-apprenticeship program, that you help get them funding, that you hold them to a gold standard, and that you're working with us to figure out, what those gold standards should be. Because if we're working together to create this workforce development system, we're pushing that up through the Apprenticeship Advisory Council within DOL. They are putting together guidance and implementation to make sure that that ends up in further grants so that they can get more money to us to increase what we're doing. So everything is, to build out what we're working on together. It's more circular, but that's pretty much the end of it. I'll stick around for any questions if anybody has any.
I do.
Alex, yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So I'm going to try to say this the best way I know how and the politest way I know how. And this has no bearing weight on you, John. I'm a little taken back because somebody created these plans. And to my knowledge, and maybe some of the other DOTs can help me out here, but how do we have all these plans set in place and all these things about training, but the directors of training are never in the room to share their ideas and their concerns about all these agendas marching forward? We have to work under a partnership with management and labor. And when the union gets together and decides that, hey, we're going to do this, 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 and this on the best interest of the membership, which I'm not fighting, but they're not including us. We're not at the table to share best practices and what we know work versus what we don't work. And then when these things get pushed on us, and then we're told that we need to go after this and grow our numbers and do pre-apprenticeship, nobody's asked our input. And to me, by not asking our input, it's a huge waste of time. And I'm glad this is being recorded, because I think the GP needs to understand that if we're not at the table, please don't make plans for us, because we need to be included and help with the understanding of what works and what, because we do work with management a lot more than anyone else. And I don't never see it happening. So, you know, as far as these plans coming out, I'm going to do what I have to do to help promote and move it forward. But I think it's a little bit lopsided when we're not involved to the level that we need to be. And we just get told, or this gets dropped on our plates. I don't think it's fair. And I think it's, you know, and again, I'm speaking as the DOT from DC 16. I'm not speaking for any other director of training, but I know there's got to be some others that probably feel the same way as me. We really need to be out there. We really need to sit down and have these conversations before things like this are rolled out. Great ideas, but there's some loopholes and there's some things that need to be squashed before we get to this level. And that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Alex. And I'll also try to be as polite as possible. So this is information. Now, we've been giving out this information about what's out there, right? I've seen you at the Western Region Conference. We've been doing this with each one of the committees, putting the information out there, right? Feedback is always accepted. Feedback can always come in. I've been doing this to, you know, where we have, you know, most people at, you know, to put the information out there. We're not telling you what to do. We're telling you what's out there in a possible strategy based on the timeline that we have. This stuff presentations, doing the research, putting stuff behind that. You know, my level of communication is with Anton, and it's with you at these conferences. You also have these meetings. You also have the ability to contact Anton or anybody on this call. I'm sure people, you know, communicate broadly. And we're looking for feedback. We're looking for best practices. We're looking to get that. In fact, we've sent out surveys to get responses from everybody, you know, on what they need in terms of support, in terms of readiness to build out these relationships that are needed to capture this funding. Now, we're getting the information as it's being given out. He only got elected last year. The federal agencies need time to put it all together, to work with us on language that's going to benefit unions. So we've been doing that work and just relaying it to you right now. So there's nothing here that's telling you this is what you have to do. Nobody's said that, I don't think. This is basically to give you information from our point of perspective right now, where we see we could be helpful. And second, you know, this meeting right now I'm on is to garner feedback, is to get, you know, what it is that you see on your level and to, you know, make that package better. One thing I mentioned was that fiscal year 22, where a lot of us aren't, you know, to this level right now, this is going to be a learning curve in pushing it together. We're trying to do all those other things to advocate for your district councils to get this money. We're just putting together a template plan and information on what's out there that we don't know that you already have. You know, if you don't already have this information, that's what we're doing. We're gathering data, we're sending out to you, putting together, you know, what we think or what we can see might be a good strategy. And then that'll get refined, not only here at the international, but in your district council. However best that works for you is going to be the best pass forward. We haven't said anything other than that. And thank you for the question. You know, we hope that there is more communication and hope that, you know, we do have more, especially around this, because this is going to be one of the only things we're focused on over the next 5 years, is putting people out to work on these projects. So.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I'm not complaining about the grant stuff. I'm more on the line of growing our membership, that we keep hearing how it's shrinking and things like that. I haven't sit at the table with anyone, not in the IU, not at the Western region, anyone, to help sit down and try to figure out as a whole a better solution, a better way to grow our market share, to grow our membership. We have never sat down. And that's what a lot of this has been about, is growing and getting the numbers and the capacity. We keep putting Band-Aids and fixing it and sharing our manpower with one another to do the right thing to get by on these projects. But we're not looking at the bottom line of what's going on. We're not strategizing with the right people. As training directors, it's our job to bring people in and have retention. When are we going to sit down and talk about retention and how it's going to work? How's the union going to help us? How is management going to help us retain these people? That's what fires me up, is when I hear about how our numbers are shrinking, but nobody's talking as a whole to make this work. It's one-sided. That's where my frustration is.
Thanks, Alex.
Alex, you know, I always appreciate when you share your opinion, because, you know, if you're thinking it, there's probably 10 other people on the call that are thinking it. And, you know, it always takes somebody to share their opinion. I think it's valuable. So I definitely appreciate your feedback. I know John does as well. You know, and I share your sentiment to a certain extent. You know, there's a lot of conversations that I think DOTs need to be in. It's always hard to get everybody together at the same time, but I would love to see DOT participation in GPAC and Leadership Conference and things like that, where we can have those conversations and move that. The issue that we find ourselves in that's you know, adjacent to this, this whole grant conversation. We have short-term solutions to issues and we have long-term solutions to issues, and we tend to focus on the short term. We tend to focus on the quickest end result to get something that we want, and that precludes us a lot of times from looking at the long-term strategy. And I think we've done a good job of communicating what our long-term strategy is, but we tend to get in the weeds on all the short-term things. And I'll give you an example of it. And this is just in my, you know, let's say the last 5 years. You know, our huge focus has been on certification, both in glazing and in industrial coatings, and both for the contractor and for the member. And then we just recently, a couple of years ago, added the certification for the training centers, or the accreditation for the training centers. The reason that we've done all of those things is because the long-term strategy is certify as many people as we can, get as many training centers certified as we can, line up those certifications into government spending, get those in bid documents and requirements and things like that. That's a long-term strategy that we've been focusing on, and we've done a decent job at it. You know, we have all the pieces in play. We have we have everything that we need to make it work. But what happens is we tend to focus on short-term solutions to problems, and we don't focus on that long-term. If we would have spent the last 5 years getting as many people certified as we could, keeping them in, and I don't want to go into all the weeds of why they're not or how we lost people and all of that, but, you know, we're not where we need to be. And we can't fix that problem today. We can't go out and certify 5,000 new members in the next, you know, the next month or two. That's going to be impossible. We can short-term mobilize to get training done in specific areas where there's projects, where there's grants available, where there's, you know, our contractor is going to be on that work. We have a short-term solution, but what we need to always be focused on is what's our long-term plan. And those are the conversations that I think DOTs do need to be involved in. And I agree with you 100%. We're the ones that actually do that work, you know, do that certification, do that training. It takes, you know, 3 to 5 years to train an apprentice into a journey person and get them certified. So we do need to be in those conversations, and we need to be at that table. And we tend to get sidelined with the short-term goals rather than the long-term. And I know that's one of the things we have been talking about at the regionals, is how do we focus on those long-term goals while at the same time take advantage of the climate that we have right now. We are in a good political space as far as opportunities that are coming down the pipe. If we had more apprentices, if we had more certified journeymen, you know, if we had all of those things in place, you know, it would be a little bit easier for us. But if it was easy, someone else would be doing it. You know, the reason that Dan Hink has been running around the country making sure that people were lined up to be able to get grants. I know you already had your stuff done before, and a lot of other DOTs did as well. But the reason Dan was going around and making sure we had SAM's registration and cage codes and things like that was so that when the opportunity presented itself, we were there. The reason we've been focusing so much on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access over the last, at least the last 2 or 3 years, but probably for the last 5, is we knew that at some point, the federal government was going to start doing compliance audits and things like that. We didn't realize this administration was going to come in and the opportunity would be ripe to, number one, do the right thing, but number two, all of those plans that we've been working on are setting us up for being in a good position to be able to take advantage of those grants, because that is a focus of the administration. So, a lot of that long-term work that we've been working on, Ken and Matt going around and getting people certified and pushing contractor certifications, all of that stuff, is working. It's working slow. It's the long-term plan, but I definitely appreciate where you're coming from, 100%. I've been rattling on for a minute, and I saw Chad had his hand up before I did. So, Chad, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, thank you. I had 2, now I have 3 questions, comments. First one, my certain situation, I tried to get on and do the ABA grant myself. And the more I got into the weeds of it, the more I realized it was way above my head. So I've reached out to a grant writer. They have got back to me and they're saying, basically it's too late now, basically. They said we can go through the hoops, we can try and get it done, but there's maybe 30 grants coming out of that ABA grant money. And we may be qualified for 15 of them. And her statement was, it kind of got announced back in like October that this grant was going to be out. Didn't go really official until February 23rd, I think. So other people already had all this, they were 3 months ahead of us to get these things, these grants written. So I guess one of my questions is, do I still continue working with her, or is the IU going to write the grants or help write the grants? 2, did we know about the grants in October where we didn't get out in front of it like maybe we could have? And my third question is, and Dan and I have talked about this for a couple of years now, but we're a 501c9 and we would like to convert to 501c3. But I need, and this could go to everybody on here, I need proof to show my trustees that switching is worth something. And they know it's for grants and they know it's for qualifying for grants, but they're like, well, is there one grant every 10 years that you can get being 501c3? And I know we can't see the future, but if there's anybody here in the past that has got one because they're 501c3, just any kind of history I can show them would be helpful. They don't want to pay the attorney, the funds to the attorney, or the attorney fund fees to, spend 40 hours trying to get us switched over and nothing good comes out of it.
So I'll try to, I think I wrote them down. So if I missed something,
I got them wrote down, so I won't let you miss it.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So first of all, should you continue to pursue that ABA grant? And I would say no. And the reason I would say no is if you're not going to get it, don't waste your time doing it. But along with that, what we do, and by we I just mean collectively as training funds, what we do is relatively the same regardless of any grant opportunity. So if a grant opportunity comes out and it's going to be focused on workforce development and training, we do that type of stuff regardless of what the opportunity specifically says. So we should be in a position to be able to pivot on almost any grant. Like we can say, look, we train industrial painters, we train glazers, we get people certified, we have pre-apprenticeship programs that we build. I would be thinking about what's the next grant that might be coming out, and you think, what do we do at this district council? What do we do really well? What are we already doing? How can we take advantage of an opportunity when it becomes available? And then when it does, you craft your grant specific to that, but it's based on things that you already do. And I think when Dan and Simon talk about what we're doing with ABA, because FTI still is doing that, we still are going after the ABA grant. I think we're Tuesday, Dan, is that the deadline? We're looking to turn it in or looking for our submission, I think Tuesday or Wednesday. So we are applying. We will get some of the resources, but primarily the resources are going to be focused on working with affiliates and having them do the work and get the money and it'll flow through us. But Dan's going to go into a little bit more detail and explain that. So no, I don't think you should continue to pursue that opportunity, but what you can do is use that opportunity as a template to start writing the next grant that might come out. And it might come out tomorrow, it might come out in a month, it might come out 6 months from now. But start thinking about, what do I do and how can I translate what I do on paper to pursue an opportunity? And then when the grant solicitation comes out, they say, we're looking for someone that can do this and this and this. You say, well, we do that, let's just change our language a little bit. As far as the 501 versus the, the C3 versus the C9, yes, it's a huge differentiator. Aside from just the grant opportunities, you don't pay taxes when you're buying stuff for your training center. That's helpful in and of itself.
We're tax exempt under the 501c9.
Are you under 9?
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentage cost that your attorney is charging for it, but I can't imagine it's too crazy, and that could be something that potentially, I'm not telling you to write a grant to us, but that if you ask for help, that might be something that might be able to pursue. So I would definitely encourage you to do it. Some other DOTs might have some feedback on specific grants they got because of it, but I know most of the grants that come out, more often than not, they're looking for 501c3 specific to what we do. Did I answer your questions before I jump to Steve? I see Steve had his hand up.
Yeah, my other part of that first question was, should I continue working with this grant writing company? Because we had a 11 to 1 phone call today with her, and she is, obviously we talked and said, okay, let's try and get ahead of next year grants or maybe later on this year grants. And so she's going to she got some of our information, is going to start looking for grants that we could possibly apply for.
I would say yes. That's kind of
so I didn't know if you guys had a system in place where you had something in the house you're going to do, or if I need to continue looking outside.
We have resources that, again, Dan and Simon will touch on those, but we have resources available that you can use. You could just take them and, just blatantly cut and paste and use some of those resources working with your existing grant writer. And yeah, I would definitely encourage you to look for what's the next opportunity and start writing for it even before it comes out.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely move in that direction. Steve?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anton. So to Chad's question, I would say, number one, majority of all the grants I'm looking at are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And, if it's, have Frank give Ryan a call. It was actually it was the easiest thing I had to do when it came down. We did it going into accreditation, and it was the easiest component to do, was to switch over. And honestly, it didn't cost us any money. We did it in-house. It's just, it's just some documentation to the IRS, and it was pretty simple. Your grant writer, I would say definitely keep working with your grant writer. Use the ABA requirements and just prepackage it. Doesn't have to be submitted, but it gives you've got time on your hand right now when you think about it. get it written out, and you can then use that as a template moving forward to the actual grant that you're gonna apply to and start pulling things out. Okay, it's not a Glazer program, it's a painter program, and it's not 3 weeks, it's 4 weeks, but start figuring out your facility, your personnel, your contract numbers and all that kind of stuff and get a half-assed budget together. And that way, what we all know, you know, even here, which is, I think today is a great day. We're in a great economic climate. We know the hardest part is chasing the money, and that money moves fast, you know, by the time it comes out. So yeah, work with that grant writer while you got them, and just get something prepackaged that's customized to you. And then you'll be 10 steps in front of the game when that one, you know, the next notification you get that says you got 20 days to submit your request, because the 20-day deadlines are crazy. And that's, I mean, I got 5 of them that I'm working on right now. So yeah, keep working with that grant writer. It's the best way to do it. Once you get a couple of them in-house, then it's just a matter of turning it into the next opportunity and the next opportunity. So keep heading along that direction. Going back to the original conversation, with all the infrastructure money coming out, it's absolutely amazing how much money is coming out. It's going to be a great decade for us, that's for sure. But once again, the more we can get out in front of this and see where this stuff is going would be great. I mean, there's mentions of mega projects and all that kind of stuff. And then you also mentioned other organizations that are going to be the actual applicants for the infrastructure money. Like if there's any way of identifying kind of where this money is going, who's applying for it, and that gives us on a local level a chance to kind of know who to start reaching out to, who to contact, that would be greatly appreciated, because then we can start pushing that language, you know, towards their direction as well too. So as of right now, I don't have a clue on that stuff, but I would love to see, you know, the kind of the map of where things are going and the contacts along the way as well too. The earmarks you mentioned, I think this applies to everybody, but this is where we were successful. You know, they call them community funded projects right now. Or yeah, as opposed to the old earmarks, but these are somewhat, there's a lot less strings attached to this. You just want to make sure that, you know, when it's specific to the individual congressman that you're talking about. They want to see this money spent within their district. Not a whole lot of details to it, but I do know that, you know, if you get it, they want you to spend it quick. So we just got, I don't know, $975,000 for an industrial pre-apprenticeship program. Through the work of the Tri-Council Development Fund that John had mentioned, and immediately encouraged for applying for the 23 fiscal year as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities there. There's your typical WIO in industrial pre-apprenticeship programs, but I'm trying to figure out even like under the agricultural community facility grants to see if I can't get money to expand a new instructional service center down in our southern zone of the jurisdiction as well too. But like anything, this stuff, it moves fast. The week we had out in DC was extremely beneficial, you know, to just kind of build those relationships and continue it. And then on a higher level note, I would ask, because you guys, I think this is the most collective effort that we've seen on these grants and all, and the money and tracking the money or trying to get ahead of the money, you know, to date. Are we on a high level, are we trying to connect some dots while we have this administration with Department of Labor and Department of Education? One of the best things I had out in DC last week or the week before, whenever it was, I don't even know what day it is anymore, was I sat down with the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Department of Education, and her eyes were lighting up when we started talking about how, you know, because immediately they automatically throw up the silos. Apprenticeship is Department of Labor, apprenticeship is Department of Labor. But when I started mentioning accreditation through Council on Occupational Education, and that's recognized, she knew it right off the bat. She knew where I was going, and that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. Her head started nodding and her eyes lit up. And obviously it's just one conversation, but you think if there's any time to tie us to the Department of Education, I would think now is the time, you know, just for, you know, we're not asking for full funding like everybody, you know, everything else, but the trillions of dollars that funnel out of that, if we could just get a little piece of the pie, just some recognition. That's all I was telling her, was just a little recognition for accredited registered apprenticeship programs is all we're trying to seek, so that's my 2 cents. I think, it's exciting. It's stressful and frustrating and shit and all that too. Don't get me wrong. Never been busier than in my life, but it's all great stuff. So a lot of good future for construction and training and all that kind of stuff coming forward.
Yeah, I agree, Steve, and I'll touch on a couple quick points that you made, and then I'll flip it over to Dan. On the spending the money side and working with in your local area with your local congressman and all that, at the end of the day, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat that's sitting in the seat, their metric for success is that they've spent the money and achieved the results that they were looking for. And if they can do that, they're more likely to get continued funding in the future. And if we can help them get there, they don't care whether we're union or not. And, a Republican's going to work with us just as well as a Democrat's going to work with us if you can make them look good and you can spend that money that they're looking to spend. So if we can show success here, I mean, nobody's a great prognosticator when it comes to, what's going to happen in November. It doesn't look good from, you look at the news today, it doesn't look like it's going to be great for us. But what we could do is we can shore up our flank by getting these grants, making them successful. And then if a bunch of Republicans come in and they see success, they don't care if it's a union that's showing success or not, because that's success for their constituents. That's success in their community. So, we need to strike while the iron's hot, and make sure that we're successful in our efforts, and that'll protect us from, whoever comes in next. And that's not just this November, that's the November after that, and November after that, and that's, kind of in perpetuity. And then the other piece on the ACA, and I'll just real briefly touch on that. We have had a lot of conversations with folks from DOE, and there's folks from DOE that have been participating in those ACA conversations, folks from, community colleges and universities, people that sit on the big boards that govern how they function. And there's a lot of conversation about collaboration between DOE and DOL. And I think it's really positive. At the end of the day, they want that money, just like we do. And they're very well funded, and they don't really want to see their pie diminished. But it's surprising the conversations we've been having and how positive that they've been, because I think they're starting to recognize there's a big enough pie for everybody to get some of it. And there's opportunities on both sides. There's opportunities for people to transfer from apprenticeship programs into colleges. There's opportunities for people to go from colleges into apprenticeship programs, and trying to make that a two-way pipeline and make them equal to one another rather than one is better than the other. It's been a lot of those conversations going on. So last plug on the ACA, there's a meeting on the 28th in DC. It's the interim report is going to be due, and I'll shoot you guys out a note rather than spend too much time here on the stuff that's going to be coming up. But one of the big ones is redefining pre-apprenticeship. So 10, 13, 12 focuses on defining what a quality pre-apprenticeship program is. We're looking to expand that, better define what a youth-focused or youth-centered apprenticeship program or pre-apprenticeship program is, and make sure that when people are calling themselves pre-apprenticeships, they're legitimate pre-apprenticeship programs like we run, rather than the illegitimate pre-apprenticeship programs that are out there. What's interesting about that is the subcommittee that I'm on is focused, specifically in that area, and I'm on there with some non-union apprenticeship operators. I'm in there with some state agency people, and some people that are they're not union or non-union. They're just, like manufacturing programs and things like that. And we're all saying the same thing, and we're all on the same page as far as legitimizing apprenticeship programs. So it's really great conversation. And I'd encourage you, if you have the time on the 28th, it's an all-day thing. I think the actual meeting's going to just be a couple of hours. If you have some time to jump on and listen, I think you'll be encouraged some of the conversations that we're having. So I'm going to flip it over to Dan. We'll still have some more time for Q&A at the end. Or Dan, am I giving it to you or Simon? Who's going to take lead on it?
I'll take it.
Simon, you're up.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I believe I know everyone on the call, but I'm Simon Hazelwood, the commercial specialist for Canada. And so Dan Hink and Tom Funstein and a bunch of others in the office, Rose Hood and Alice and other people have been contributing to gather information for to write the application for the Apprenticeship Building America grant. The grant application is for a 5-week pre-apprenticeship program. When we are successful with the grant, getting a very diverse workforce specific to the areas that we're looking in, different and specific to each area. The details, like Chad said, the details for this grant are extensive and it's a ton of work. But it also gives us a great opportunity to build files, to create like a grant template resource that people can use going forward. And also, I'd say, Chad, we've had the luxury in Canada for the last 5 years. Our government has been very helpful with the grants, and one of the things that we found really successful was sharing information with one another. All the DOTs worked together when they were writing these grants, and in the first year, we did hire someone to help us out, and we actually weren't as successful as we were going forward. But I would recommend also working with that grant writer, because it does give you the leg up. But honestly, just sharing, the success stories and best practices is a fantastic way to go. So also, as we gather all the information, we're working with the company High Road Alliance, and they're helping write the narrative for the grant application. And Jenny and Peter from High Road Alliance, they're a great resource. They bring a lot of information to the table. They have extensive knowledge of writing grants. They write the narrative, they bring it back to us. Dan and Tom and I go through it, and we go back and forth and correct all sorts of information. But anyways, like I said, we've been able to write this or put together this template of resources. It's not quite finished yet, but Dan and I have been working on it quite a bit, and I'll put it over to Dan to share that with you.
Hey guys, so we did know about a lot of these opportunities back in October. That's why we were really pushing to get the CAGE codes and the, you get set up with your profile on grants.gov, get your DMB and your all that bit done, because you have to have those things to be eligible. So we were working on it, but they didn't come out with, so if the lady said that they knew about this particular grant, we didn't know about it until, like around, you said, it was about the 3rd week of February. And so we got on it pretty quick. Some of the funding things come out on a couple of the links that I put on the chat. If you guys want to copy those down, I would subscribe to those 2 links if you can, especially the FFIS one. It's for federal funds by the state level, and it'll give you opportunities, maybe, more local, that'll help you out. Like what Simon said, so we've been working with this group on some other issue on vessel training. That's how we first got in touch with High Road Alliance. Doc, has known them for a little while and kind of contacted them. And in talking with them, we realized that they did have some experience with the grant writing. So what we decided to do is we would use this as kind of a dual purpose thing. We're going to not only go after the grant aggressively, but we're also going to be able to write maybe all the processes down and create them all for you guys. So that would help you if you wanted to go after them yourselves. Not everybody has the same skill set. And so sometimes, anytime you can work with a professional, we always say to do that. Absolutely. You'll get better return. But there are some times where you could probably tackle it. And maybe with what we've created, maybe you can tackle some. Even if you work with a grant writer, a lot of the stuff you have to track down. They're not going to be able to get a lot of the information. You have to get it for them. The narrative is only as good as the information that you give them, the stackable content that you come up with. So it's not like, it's really difficult to just hire someone and just have them do everything and you'll be out of it and hopefully get money. That's really difficult. I'm going to share. So we created a shared drive that we've been working on, and I just pulled out probably 2/3 of the documents. There's still more in there, but this will kind of give you an outline of what we're talking about and what you guys will be able to use moving forward. Can everyone see this? You guys see in the Apprenticeship Building America at the top? Okay. So first and foremost, anytime you're going to go after something, read the grant, okay? Because everything you need to know is in it. And this grant in particular, I believe, is 87 pages, I think. And it's just a lot of detail. And if you miss something, first you have to see if you're even qualified for it. So you might read 40 pages and then realize, oh crap, we don't qualify. Like maybe you're a C9 or maybe you're whatever. You have to teach to the public, which is difficult for us. So read the grant, understand it, and then start with your concept paper, right? So your concept paper should look like, why you're doing this. Why are we going down this road? A little history on yourselves. What you're going to go after. In this particular grant for us, what we're going after is female participation, Black African American, Native American, English as a second language learners, and then some other unrepresented, lower financial class, WIOA people. And that's why we have to work with WIOA because it's one of the stipulations. So like if you got all the way through that 87-page document and then realized that you didn't have a WIOA partner, you're not qualified. So that's why it's really important to read through them really well. It's just a little 2-pager, like I said, it talks about who we're going after and such. And that'll give everyone an idea. So any partner that you're going to work with on this, you can send that to, and they're going to understand the why and the how. Logic module. You need to start building this. This is kind of going to be how you do the work, who does the work, your timelines, what you're going to get out of it, and what the impact moving forward is going to be. And this is a document that changes. We've changed this thing probably 10 times. Right here, the project milestones and activities we're going to talk about in a little bit, but it does break out 7 of the 8. We've got one more to add here. 7 of the 8 milestones that it talks about in the grant. So you have to be able to identify how you're going to reach these goals. A project abstract. So this is what you're going to build to help keep yourself kind of on track, right? So this is abstract. This is what we're going to get to, right? We're writing it for 3 million. These are the states that are directly going to benefit or that we're directly going to work with. But we're going to try to work with all 27 affiliates. We think there's money in there. It was just too hard to write all these, specifications that they're asking for all 27 affiliates. So we did identify 380. This is the populations that we talked about. These are the required partners by the grant. So we have to have a WIO, we have to have employer buy-in, these are the other partners. So we have partners in all these other factions that they list, and they list all these educational. They want community college help. They want other educational things. So we list all these things. These are the community-based organizations and diversity programs that the 6 councils that we're dealing with have, right? And the purpose is to gain our RAP programs in the diverse and equity and inclusion that we're after, right? That they're after, that the Department of Labor is after. These are some of the credentials they asked for. We will be hiring a DEIA agent, that is for diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Somebody to kind of be the program manager, help the affiliates use the money, help the affiliates build the pre-apprenticeship programs, help us get the numbers that we're after, right, in these areas. A work plan. Okay, you'll see that this is we're still working on this. We still have about not quite a week we're gonna turn this in next Wednesday. But these are who's responsible for what. Our due dates we haven't got because we pretty much shot through these really quick because we had a very short window to get this done. These are all the deliverables, and so on and so on. We don't have to get it, but they are based on those 7, or based on those 8 milestones, right? So, like I said, these are tools that you guys can use. You can't copy and paste this and expect it to work, but you can copy the process, right? You can see the process for yourself and how we kind of went about this, right? Here's another way to look at it. This is a gap analysis, and we've done these before. Basically, it's like a flow chart, a workflow. This is who we're serving. This is how we're going to bridge the gap to apprenticeship, right? To get them in our apprenticeship, and this is how we're going to do it, right? So if you wanted to show somebody what we're doing, this is just an easy 1-pager. It's easy to look at. Checklist. This is what we work with the 6 affiliates. This is just one example. So this is District Council 82. This is how we found out all that information to use. We did this with all 6. This is how we identified how many apprentices we were going to go after. These 40 are going to be in Helena. These 60 are going to be in Minneapolis. It's a 4-year program because the grant is a 4-year with this exact timeline, July of 22 through June of 26. So we just added up everyone that said that they wanted to be involved, and that's how we came up with the 380. Now, is 380 our real number? No, we want it to be more. We think it can be more, but we know that we can do 380. So they want to know key staff. They want to know contractor group and buy-in so that we can have commitment letters. They want to know how they can transition, how we can get transitioning educational folk. Community-based stuff, there's the local workforce that we're going to work with, the WIO board, job course part of it. When we built this is like a profile piece that we use to build all those other pieces, right? To satisfy the questions in the grant. Here's the demographic audit that we used for understanding that that's who we needed to go after was Black, African-American, female, and we had an English language problem. And this is the graph that the organizing staff put together. It goes by organization. So this is all of our IUPAT numbers. And then it gets into the apprentices and females. So we use this to kind of tell the story that we already knew, but this tells the story perfectly for us. So. Oh, my screen froze up. Can you guys see this still? All right. Staffing plan, org chart. Everyone's going to ask, they're going to always ask you for the org chart because they want to know 2 things. They want to know what is the, the pecking order basically, and they're going to get intrusive. They want to know how we're going to staff this, right? And how we're paying for it. So they're going to want to know, how much money do you make, what your benefits are, what time of are you allotting to the project? So if somebody makes $100 grand a year, and then you're going to allot 10% of your time, then that's $10,000, and you have to account for everything. And that's kind of when you start to get into the budgets, right? So the budget narrative is very important. A lot of these grants have something already kind of that they want you to go by, right? They yeses and nos. Here's points that they're going to give you. They just flat tell you, hey, here's the points. We're not going to give points for this. We're going to cost you points for these other things. You have to be able to follow this SF 424A that I'm so sick of looking at. It's driving me crazy. But and then they outline what you have to do in every single section, right? And how you, like equipment, if it's above 5,000, you can only buy one of them through the whole 4-year program, and so on and so on. And you have to be able to satisfy all these things, which is possible. It's tedious, but it's nothing, especially training directors, you guys order material and you build new programs and you do all this stuff already anyway, right? Here's a worksheet. This is not from the Department of Labor. This is from us that we kind of built to be able to answer those questions for those different categories, right? So we built the program that we're wanting to use has the four biggest trades, right? It has commercial paint, industrial paint, glazing, and drywall. And so we put 1 week into each one of those programs, and this is the budget for those things, right? And then it spells out how we're going to spend it, where, and it goes on. We have to do all these other things. We have to put like the executive staff on there and how that's going to look like for the IFTI, and we have to spell that out as well. So this is a really colorful document that we put together, which it's not, we need to tool it up. We just built it to kind of be able to do that, but it does describe where we're spending part of the money. And then we have to do this for everything, but what the salaries look like for the week, and then what it looks like for the whole program. These are possibilities that we have to put in. You know, if a instructor has to travel to the area to teach, we're willing to pay that. What the tools look like, we put on a different one. We have marketing in this. We have food that we can pay for the students and the staff. They're going to get stipends if it's progressive, 100 for the first week and so on through 500 for 1,500 total. They are getting these things, they're just getting them through that other budget, but they are going to get boots and hard hats and glasses bought for them. They are going to get certain tools that they get to keep, some that they don't. Here's transportation for the students. If need be, they have daycare in it. This doesn't mean that you can just do it. It spells it out that you can. So we put it in here. And so we get these sheets. The IFTI is getting 20% fee to pay for things, to pay for High Road Alliance, to pay for our staff travel, to pay for things on the admin side. So we're not there. This isn't complete. We have the other pieces. We're pretty much done with this, but inside of that 600,000, we have to report on this as well. So it looks like so this is just travel to each one of those areas and what it would look like, right? What the flight, rental, lodging, everything else, so that we can put that inside of that budget. So this is inside of that $600,000 budget that the FTI gets, right? And it asks, so you have to spell out everything. Then you have your project narrative. So in this case, you can only have 20 pages. So we're whittling this down. We put a whole bunch of stuff in here, and then we're kind of taking it down. We're at 22 pages, I think, as it is right now. But this will tell the whole story. It will have some graphs in it. We've got some numbers that we built through the organizing department, that we built through labor statistics, that we've done all this stuff with, right? So like I said, it's only, we're at 22. So we got to whittle it down a little bit farther over the next few days. And then you're allowed complimentary documents, right? So letters of commitment. So we sent these out to the 6 affiliates. There's 4 versions of the same variation of the same letter. This one is for a contractor group or a contractor or a community group. Basically says that they support us in our pre-apprenticeship journey to get better inclusion and equity into our programs and better diversity. And they're going to try, if it's a community group or a partner like Job Corps or one of those partners, they're going to help us put butts in the pre-apprenticeship seats, right, to fill the 380 that we want. Then we want contractor buy-in to say, okay, we're going to hire the butts that you put in those seats, right? So that's why the letters are the way that they are. And then we need letters from the entity, which is the IFT, which is the FTI and the district council. So then everybody's got a piece of the action there. And then we have to put in staff roles and responsibilities for everybody attached to the program. So that is what we're building. There'll be a couple other pieces and it'll look a little different when we're done. But that is the grant pieces that we're working on for you guys, hoping that it helps in the future. Because like I said, it doesn't just end when you hire a grant writer. You have to provide so much stuff for them, you know, that it's hard to know how much and where to get it and how to get it and what it should look like. So hopefully this helps. And when we're done and we get it all kind of cleaned up and we get the drive kind of better organized, it's a little bit chaotic because there's 5 of us kind of playing around on there right now. Then we'll turn it over to you guys and invite you guys to that drive, and you guys can have the resources as you see fit. So that's what I have, Anton, Simon and I and Doc, and we've just been working really hard on it.
So does anyone have any questions for Dan? I know they've been busting their butt to try to get it all put together, and been a learning experience for us as well as I know what you guys go through when you do yours as well. So okay.
I had a question. Or Dan, this is for Dan. I guess I did all the cage code, the numbers, everything on there, and it was actually on there today. And then to try to register for or apply for one of the grants, you have 2 buttons. One says apply, one says something else, but it won't let you click on to apply. Am I missing something that I haven't put into all that information that they required of us to apply for a grant, or is that?
Did you set up your profile on grants.gov? Yeah, I don't know. Send me like a screenshot to look at it. Let me see what it looks like.
Chad, I see your hand up too. Is that from before, or you have a new question? Or
I have a new question. Dan, that letter, that commitment letter from the contractor, how are we going to do that with like rank and rate?
Well, we talked about that quite a bit. You still can. I mean, there are ways, especially if they're a diverse population within your fund, you can always put whoever you want on to meet numbers for the department. That's the short answer.
Okay.
The long answer is, there's other versions you can give other credit for. You can give a lot of credit for completing a 5-week program. That would change the way that they're ranked. But like I said, the short answer is if you're not meeting your diversity and equity numbers, you can put people on. The only one that I've heard that you can't, and I know Sarah and I talked about this, the Swarthout, but she said that they can do that too, but they're not allowed to. The only time that you're not allowed to do that is if there's somebody sitting. Like, so if you have an unemployment list, you can't subvert your unemployment list in the state of Washington. So, and I imagine that's probably similar just about everywhere. But if you're just looking for students and you don't meet your Hispanic number or your minority Black or your female number or whatever it is, you can always give them a go.
and
Thank you.
On that, you could there's some good and bad that go with the ranking list versus a pool of eligible. But you can adjust those ranking lists if you don't already have it to include things like direct entry upon completion of a program, things like that. So there's other ways to skin that cat that are more long-term, and I would encourage people to do that, regardless of, independent of the grant conversation, just pre-apprenticeships in general. I think there's pre-apprenticeships can be a very valuable tool if we use them the right way. A lot of non-union programs don't use them the right way, but we could really take advantage of all the different features that they offer. Bringing people into pre-apprenticeship is a good way to weed out people that aren't going to be successful in registered apprenticeship, and it doesn't affect your retention rates if you drop them from pre-apprenticeship. Pre-apprenticeship can train people in things that we can't train them in registered apprenticeship because we don't have the time. You can bring people in that are outside of who you can bring in for registered apprenticeship, like somebody Florida, we had standards that said you have to read, write, and speak in English. We couldn't bring people in that didn't. If we had a pre-apprenticeship program, you can bring non-English speakers into pre-apprenticeship, teach them English, and then they can transfer into registered apprenticeship. So, you can use pre-apprenticeship as a tool. I think as career exploration, there's some benefit there, but as apprenticeship readiness, I think that's the real value in pre-apprenticeship. And it's a great tool to focus on specific cohorts as well. If your female numbers are low, or your African American numbers are low, or your Hispanic numbers are low, you can target those populations and create a cohort of those, those groups to come in and go through the program and focus on the challenges or the specific training that might be valuable to them. There's been a ton of studies that men and women learn things differently, just like adults and children learn things differently. So, if you bring in a cohort of all female apprentices and you could tailor the training to those female apprentices, they're going to be better served and better, be better once they get into the registered apprenticeship, be more prepared for it. So I think there's a lot of value in using pre-apprenticeship the right way. Jesse, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. So I guess a question, I mean, you might not exactly know the answer, but in any of the other pre-apprenticeships you've worked with before, like I'm talking with Dan to try to get on the 5-week English as a second language pre-apprenticeship. How is it very often that you have someone or have people who go into the pre-apprenticeship, take advantage of that, but then maybe never follow through on actually joining the apprenticeship? Is that very common? You might not know.
So it depends. Being around other trades, they run them all different kind of ways. And we talked about this on the last few calls, the difference between a introductory pre-apprenticeship program and a job readiness program. Now, if you do a introductory, right, and they just come and they see your program for a day and they go see the carpenters and the iron workers and the electricians and everybody else. Okay, we have almost zero luck with that. If you have a job readiness program that has them come in every Saturday for a while, or maybe they're high schoolers or whatever, we have better numbers. Focus, narrow our focus to a particular demographic, right? So, and so people, there's comfort, right, in seeing someone go through it that looks like you, that's in the same economic problems as you, or the same communities as you, and I think that we're trying to help that way. In 5 weeks, we've never been able to bridge that gap with contractors because they don't feel that what the pre-apprenticeship does for the student is enough. It's that way with Job Corps. It's that way with the introductory programs. For whatever reason, they just don't feel like, well, that's not enough to get me to hire you. I'd still rather hire Lawnmower Johnny, right? And so that's why we think, okay, if you could put this 5-week program and you can show that you could be on time and show up to these 25 days and go through all this stuff, we're hoping that will be enough to bridge that, whatever that divide is. Maybe it needs to be 8 weeks. Maybe 4 is enough. We don't know, but we think 5 is enough. That puts it more than a first-year apprenticeship. So
right, that makes sense. Yeah, and like I said, I'm sure it was something you might not have an exact answer on, but that does make sense. And I agree. If someone can stick with that for 5 weeks, I'm probably going to be pretty good about sticking with the apprenticeship in the long run too. And that's one of the bigger problems we're having is retention. So, okay, thank you.
We wanted to pay them enough to where it was worthwhile to go, but we didn't want to pay them so much it was a job. And that when they quit the pre-apprenticeship program, they go, well, I just had a job for 5 weeks. That's good enough.
So one of the experiences I had with pre-apprenticeship, Ken and I taught that PAT VP class up in a couple of them up in Seattle, Washington, and that started off. It was a 3-week program, and then we added a week to it. And I think out of the first class there was like 5 people that went on to join registered apprenticeship programs. And I think you're going to get different numbers all over the place, but that's an example of a cohort. It was a veterans cohort. They all had, different challenges for veterans coming out of the service than your average apprentice coming in. and it was tailored specifically to them. And it was a valuable experience for us and for them. Being able to work through them with that program. One of the things that Dan kind of highlighted that could be an issue is sometimes contractors don't want to take someone that graduated from a pre-apprenticeship program because it has a certain stigma, or they think, well, what can they learn in 5 weeks, or something like that. You can get around that once you transfer that individual into an apprenticeship program and they come in with credit. You don't have to tell the contractor they graduated a pre-apprenticeship program. You say, this is a apprentice that's a level 2 apprentice, or 6 months, been in the program 6 months, or has 6 months credit. You don't necessarily have to say, this is a student that graduated our English as a second language pre-apprenticeship program, and now they're going out to work for you, Mr. and Mrs. Contractor. So it's really all in how you sell it or how you market it to them. But I think the best value for us for pre-apprenticeship, Dan said this too, it's not a career exploratory program, which there's some value in those. They do that here in DC 51. They take people right out of high school, they put them in a summer program so they learn about the trades, and some of those people transfer in, some of them don't. There's definitely value in that, but I think for us, the more value is apprenticeship readiness. Bring people in, and one of the biggest benefits, I think, we can't register people, that are not going out to work for a contractor in our registered apprenticeship programs. You have to have a contractor and a job for them to go to. You can put people in a pre-apprenticeship program without having a contractor for them to go to work for. Your pre-apprenticeship program, if you structure it appropriately, you could have an indefinite pre-apprenticeship program. You could have it be time and skills based, and use that as a pool of potential candidates for your registered apprenticeship. So you bring in 50 people in your pre-apprenticeship, you give them some training, you work with them along the way, and when you have 2 or 3 or 4 openings, that's the pool of people that you pull from for direct entry into your registered apprenticeship. So there's a lot of flexibility that you have in pre-apprenticeship that you don't have in registered apprenticeship. And I know this conversation's been about grants, but even if we don't get paid to do this, or even if we don't get government resources to do this, if we start looking at pre-apprenticeship as a tool to accomplish a lot of the issues that we have, I think we're going to be better served for it. So the English as a second language issues, the high school diploma, GED, potentially driver's license, and things like that. There's things that we can do in pre-apprenticeship that we can't do in registered apprenticeship. And if we build the programs the right way, it helps us, provide members of the community an opportunity, but it also helps make sure that we're getting the right people into our programs and setting them up for success once they do get into those programs. So that was a little off topic.
No, I might be putting Steve on a little on the jump street here, but they're working out a new program that I think solves a lot of what we've been talking about the last 20 minutes. Steve, if you're willing to chat about it.
Sure. I'm running out of time, but let me just make a suggestion, if I could. When you are creating and requesting pre-apprenticeship programs, think about, well, we all know there's a lot of barriers for minorities, underrepresented people, females, and all that to come into the industry. And in your pre-apprenticeship program that you're proposing, you have support services that you're already requesting for. I saw that in your budget. Think about, as a recruitment note, let's say a placement and a retention strategy, to expand those support services into apprenticeship for the first 6 months, if a year, if you can get it, because number one, barriers don't go away. And that's a lot of the problems that we see with pre-apprenticeship programs. We support them through pre-apprenticeship, and then we cut off all that support and expect them to be successful in apprenticeship. And that's not the reality, right? So think about that, even with this one that you got right now. If you can't carve that out as a placement and retention strategy, because that's the overall goal, is to get them into apprenticeship programs. So it fits within these grants. For the others that aren't necessarily going after the ABA grants, work with the people that are. So Chicago Women in the Trades, and I'm sure Women Build Nations, they're all going after this too. So make sure, and these are conversations like to have now, today, Monday, because their deadline is just as quick. And it can also get you help. It can get you half of these proposals already, because you're gonna have to have your demographics and all that, but be there to support them and their efforts going through. And you can get a lot of this, half of that grant writing kind of done for free, because they're gonna do it for you. They've been writing grants for a long time. And if you show support and commitment to them, they're gonna outline your templates for you a little bit too.
A lot of the places that are asking for the money don't really have places to train. They're gonna need your training center. They're gonna need your help. So, there'll be money for you in that as well.
We're working with Chicago Women of the Trades right now on that very, very exact thing. The climate jobs that you guys have all heard about as well too. I mean, that's going across the nation. We've got a Climate Jobs Illinois Coalition, same thing. That's more general introductory type pre-apprenticeship programs, but partner with them. And you guys know that a lot of the pre-apprenticeship money has been going to community colleges and community organizations. Go straight to the source, find out who got those grants and start partnering with them. Sometimes it's better not to actually get the money because then you got to figure out what to do with it. I'm not saying better, but if somebody else is already doing the recruitment and all that kind of stuff, to have it done. All right, Dan, you want me to talk about a new strategy we're trying to roll out to get some sort of influence on our numbers as well? So this would be.
Well, here, let me preface it a little bit.
Okay.
So, being training directors, we all understand that we are tasked by the Department of Labor, by all of our partners, as if we were employers, which we're not. And we are directly tasked to change these diversity and equity numbers when we're not employers. It makes it very, very difficult. Still cater to guys that look like me. So, because it's legacy, I have a dad, an uncle, a cousin, a brother, or whatever, right? That's why. It's not because it's devious or something. That's just the way it is. So with that said, if we truly had the power for placement, that would help fix things. So with that said.
All right, well, with that said, we're a letter of intent apprenticeship program, dealt with the same issues year after year, decade after decade of having zero influence whatsoever on our numbers. Our contractors can hire whoever they want to. And quite frankly, we're not the source of labor for them. They don't call us up looking for apprentices. They just hire word of mouth, or they hire friends and family, or they hire whoever they want. The sad reality of that too is that they really have no commitment. You guys, a lot of you know this. They'll hire people based on the need of the jobs because they want a first year to do some work. And then we know that first year or whatnot can be laid off in a matter of 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden they're our problem again. They're an unemployed registered apprentice with our program. And that cycle just continues. So rather than that person getting the next opportunity when there's a larger job or the industry demands, that next contractor just picks up a couple more, works them, lays them off. And it's just this never ending cycle that just leads to no strategy when hiring apprentices, a lot of out of work apprentices, which then ended up resulting in just really poor retention numbers. And I've seen some really great candidates get stuck into this, this cycle, and we lose them. So needless to say, we've been trying over the years to get something changed. A lot of this comes down to collective bargaining. We went through 2 cycles, realizing collective bargaining is no place for strategy. And we put a labor management committee together to address it. So over the last 2 years, literally, we've worked as a labor management committee, identified the problems so nobody can walk out of that room saying we don't have an issue. And quite frankly, just yesterday, we came to a tentative agreement with all the language in there. And here's the 3 things. There were 10 recommendations out of the committee, but there's 3 recommendations that require change to our collective bargaining agreement. One is straight up require higher volume companies to hire 1 or more apprentices. Like number 1, we have some of our largest companies that don't necessarily participate in apprenticeship. So that had to change. That got passed. I'll go with the easy one too. Two is start, increase the starting wage of an apprentice, plain and simple. We've been down at the 40, 50%. And in some of our areas, it's down to $15.27. And we're competing with Amazon and McDonald's and Rivian and all these places that are automatically offering $18 to $22 an hour to start. So recruitment, if we're not offering, if we're not anywhere near that, we can't even recruit, even though those, some of those are just dead end jobs and work careers. The third main one though that we're doing, going back to letter of intent and staying letter of intent, what we've got now is language that we're putting in our collective bargaining agreement. We're calling it, in basic terms, I'm going to use the term indentured, even though I'm going to be using sponsored. But I don't want to confuse sponsored with general apprenticeship sponsors. So we are incorporating indentured language and what we're considering a hiring pool, a hybrid hiring pool. So we're still letter of intent, but our language states that a contractor can hire whoever they want as long as they're going to indenture the person for the entire term of the apprenticeship program. There's a lot of caveats behind this. There's a whole written agreement and all kinds of ways for the contractor. It basically is tying all three components together. The student, the contractor, and the school all have the ability to terminate the agreements based on specific causes. But in the most case, it's putting everybody back together. So if it's just, you can't just lay somebody off because it's just no work. I mean, you can if that's the reason, but you can't get rid of them. You can't get rid of your agreement type of deal. So that's one, hire whoever you want, but you're indentured or you're sponsoring that person for the entire term. If you can't commit to that, you're coming to the school. You're going to give that opportunity that you have for that one job site or whatnot. You're going to hire current out of work or underemployed apprentices to do that work. And if you can't, then you're going to hire from our recruitment efforts as well. So we can start have any influence on the numbers as we continue to work with our program partners. Then we can now begin to start placing people on those jobs, even if it is only 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because that's what our contractors need though sometimes, right? So that's the main goal behind what we're trying to do. And right now, as long as, I can't see our members voting this down by any means, but contractors just signed it yesterday. So we're pretty happy about it.
Steve, what was your first one you said?
Just requiring high volume companies to hire one or more apprentices.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions or comments, Steve? I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Okay, I know we are brushing right up against the hour. I didn't think it'd take us the whole time, but once again, I underestimated our ability to rattle on. So I appreciate everybody jumping on. I do hope this was valuable. We'll be sending out again. It'll probably be Monday, but we'll be sending out the links that we shared in the chat. We will send out John's PowerPoint and then a copy or a link to the video recording. So if anybody has any further questions or anything like that, you get with Dan, myself, anybody on the FTI team, and we'll be happy to work with you and try to get you pointed in the right direction. So appreciate everybody's time. Have a great day. Have a great Easter holiday. Great Passover. Matzah, however you choose to celebrate. If it's just a nice weekend for you, that works too. So have a good one. It's great seeing everyone, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.